We'll call the meeting to order. It's Tuesday, August 23rd of 2022, and the first order of business would be the roll call.
Okay, Legaki. Moving on, Mayeski.
Hey.
Yep.
Reeves.
Here.
Hunt.
Here.
Schumacher.
Here.
Venegas.
Here.
Tukalski.
Here.
Caravello.
Here.
Raff.
Here.
Hiley.
Here.
Hirsch.
Here.
Jensen.
Here.
And is Alder Legaki there yet?
Not here, no. Not in
Okay.
the room.
Okay. Then we have 11 alders present.
All right, thank you so much. The minutes and reports are in the packet. Public comment period, nobody is signed up to speak tonight. So that will take us to communications and presentations. Are there any communications from alders?
Just to save the date for, we're doing a sustainability committee community dialogue or open house. It's going to be at Chorus Public House on September 21st. More info is going to be upcoming, but just so you know. Thank you.
Would it be possible also to share the CIP dates in September?
The CIP dates?
I will
have Dave will do that.
I will have to look those up and send those out to everybody.
Yeah, I believe the first one is September 8th. Does that sound right?
I believe so, but
I have September 8th, 22nd, and 29th.
the only problem we've got is one of those nights, and I don't remember which one, is the same night that court is, so we got to figure out how to do that.
Okay. Yeah, I think they take priority. So we'll work that out. We can always move it to the fire station if it's available. Any other communications for alders?
I was slightly late to the meeting. I'm here. It's Jean Legaki.
Awesome. Welcome. Any other communications? And I just have a couple. First of all, I wanted to thank Public Works. If you go to the City of Stoughton Facebook account, you'll see an update with all the date of estimated times of completion for our street construction projects. So I think that was something that was well received by the community, so I appreciate them thinking about putting that on there so people know what's going on. And then also, I would like to thank Candy for giving up a Saturday to do a recount here for the second district. Candy and some volunteers came in. It was for the whole entire Congressional District 2, I believe. Anything you want to say about that, Candy?
Thanks for that. Yeah, I had 11 election inspectors, and myself and Deputy Clerk Nimmo went to the Alliant Energy Center on Saturday. It was pretty short notice, but we were scheduled to start our count at 3:30 in the afternoon. We actually started at 2:30 and we counted until about 5:30 in the afternoon. Everything was correct and coincided with the election day results, so that went very well. I also wanted to say thanks to them that showed up on short notice for the recount. They judiciously hand counted the ballots, and one inspector even went back yesterday to continue to help with the recount. So, so that was our Saturday. That was our weekend, but it went well. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you to you and all the volunteers. Obviously, elections are important, and given what you've gone through, we appreciate everybody that gave up their extra time to do this. So I also sent an email out to the League of Municipalities to kind of let them know about how I felt about some of the communications that we received by one of the candidates that I wasn't too pleased about. So I'm hoping that word will get back to that candidate. Otherwise, I'll email them direct. Any communications from council members? All right, hearing none, we do have some more ARPA requests tonight, and we'll start out with, Dave, do you want us to kind of give us a recap of where we're at before we get into the presentations?
Sure. Where we're at, requests are 1.15 million more than we have in money.
Okay.
First one that we've got up is Neighborhood Free Health Clinic. Do you want to drive?
Sure, I can
Okay.
do that. And who's going to present, Barry? You can just come up to the podium and introduce yourself, and then just let me know when to go to the next slide.
Hi. Can you all hear me on the phone, I hope? My name is Barry Vertigan. I'm representing the Neighborhood Free Health Clinic. I really appreciate this opportunity basically to beg for money, especially given what you just told us about your requests. My agenda here is really fairly short. I'd like to just kind of bring you up to date on who the clinic is, what our services that we provide, who our patients are, how the pandemic has affected us, and of course our ask. I'm not sure who I should look at for changing slides. Thank you. So who is the Neighborhood Free Health Clinic and what do we do? So what we are is we're part of the safety net for people in difficult situations, and especially for those who temporarily have a gap in their health care. We're there to keep them from falling through the cracks. Our mission is to provide compassionate health care to those in need, and what we provide is non-emergency health care. So really it's primary health care. We provide it free of charge, and we provide it to people living in Stoughton and the surrounding communities. We're a nonprofit. We rely 100% on donations to provide our services. So we don't charge for what we do. And in addition to that, except for a part-time clinic director and a public relations intern, everyone that works for the clinic is a volunteer, including myself. So we're a pretty low-budget bootstrap organization, and we're kind of used to begging for money, I guess. On to the next slide. So what services do we provide? As I mentioned, it's non-emergency health care that we provide. So what we provide is primary health care services. These are things like physical exams, screening tests, medication assistance. We also provide assistance in managing chronic conditions. These are conditions like hypertension, diabetes, asthma, COPD. I'm sure you can add to the list. But these are people who have ongoing conditions, and it really is a maintenance thing for them just to stay alive and have a quality of life. We also provide behavioral health care and counseling. We have a really nice staff that really is out there helping people get through difficult times in their lives. More recently, we provide dental care for preschool children. So we don't, pull teeth or do cavities or things like that. We're helping them is clean their teeth, teaching them how to take care of their teeth so they don't have dental problems later on. And in the process, we're also teaching their parents the same, which is really important. So we're really kind of doing double duty. And then we provide a number of related services, things like physical therapy. That's a new service for us. Referrals to specialists, workers' comp evaluations. Before you go back to work, you need to pass a physical. We can provide that. Women's wellness, something I didn't list and probably should have, is just plain health education. A number of years ago, I was interviewing some patients and just, casual conversation, what does good health mean to you? And the answer I got was, well, geez, I haven't been to the ER for weeks. That's great health. No, it's not. We're here to keep people out of the ER and to keep them healthy. That's why we exist as an organization. And we do this in a little different way. We try to treat the whole person. When someone comes in our doors, we take the time to talk to them, to find out what's going in their life so that we can treat them, given the context of everything that happens in their day. There's no sense telling them to do something if they can't afford to do it, or they don't have time to do it, or the way to do it. So we work with them to work through the whole problem and to get at the root solution to whatever is going on in their life. Next slide, please. So who are we serving? Our patients are uninsured and underinsured people, our neighbors, really. The services we provide are available free of charge to anyone without regard to your race, religion, ethnicity, sexual orientation, immigration status, whether you're employed or not. We don't care. If you need help, we're there for you. Practically, what does that mean? Our patients might be unemployed, they might be recently laid off, they might be between jobs. Earlier in the month when I was working our front desk, we had a walk-in who came in who just moved to the area, full-time job, but insurance doesn't kick in for 30 days and he needed help now. There's a lot of reasons why people don't have health care now when they need it. Other examples are self-employed people, part-time people, seasonal workers, students. People forget about this. A lot of times students are no longer eligible to be on their parents' insurance policy. What do? Especially as the age of students gets older in colleges and universities. Immigrants, those new to the area, these are all people that we might provide services to. In general, people with no insurance, people that have high deductible or high copay insurance, or people that have gaps in their insurance. Something isn't covered that they need. We're there as part of the safety net. Next slide. As you might guess, the pandemic has had a pretty big effect for us. And I'd like to use this graph to kind of make that point. You see 3 bars there. Each bar is a different year, 2020, 2021, 2022. And that's the number of visits, the number of patients we saw each of those years. And that looks, kind of like it's going up and flat, and I just want to provide a little technicolor here. The first is in 2020, it actually was a partial year for us. That's when the pandemic broke loose. And for a great chunk of that year, the medical establishment was trying to figure out how do we see patients safely, how do we not infect people, how do we not infect the workers. So we really couldn't see patients live and in person during that time. So that reduced our numbers, obviously. On the other hand, you see 2022. It's only half over. That's 6 months of data right there. We expect that pace to continue for the rest of the year. So really what that means is we're seeing a doubling in patients every year over the last 3 years. That's a big increase in the need for our services. In addition to that, we've had to develop new ways of offering those services. A good chunk of 2020 and early 21 was developing telemedicine, so we can see people via computers, smartphones, what have you, so they don't have to come in and risk infection. And kind of as a side benefit to that allowed us to really increase our behavioral health screening. A lot of those don't have to be done in person. So again, we had to develop new ways of providing our services. We had to expand the services we offered. We've increased our behavioral health staff, started to offer things like vaccinations, pediatric dental care, physical therapy. These are all new services that became recognized as needs as we've gone on. And we're continuing to identify new such needs. So we've expanded our services, improved our technology, the way we offer it, and still the numbers keep going up and up of what we need and who we need to help. And in the background of all this is the cost of providing services has not gone down, it's risen. And yet we can't have live fundraising events. And so that really has kind of cramped our style. That's a big reason why we're here asking for financial help. So that gets to the next slide. What really are we asking? What we're asking is that the council would designate about $20,000 or up to $20,000 to help us meet our shortfalls, if you will. This money will enable us to continue to provide the uninsured and underinsured neighbors, individuals in our community, the health care that they really need. Our goal, again, is not to provide emergency health care, but to keep people out of the hospital, to keep them at home working, being valuable, contributing members of society. For this $20,000, we expect this to provide much greater benefit to the Stoughton area in 3 ways in particular. The first, it provides greater job and income security for individuals and families that are at risk. I think that's a pretty big important thing. The second thing is it reduces employee sick days and the resultant lost productivity for local businesses. People are less likely to call in sick if they're healthy. And then the third thing, and this we actually have documentation for, is it reduces the number of visits to the emergency room and hospitalizations. Last year we had access to some software so we could analyze our direct impact on Stoughton Hospital, and we estimate that approximately $50,000 a quarter we're saving Stoughton Hospital, or if you will, $200,000 a year. And that was last year, which is half the number of patients we're seeing this year. That's big bucks. That's a pretty good return on investment. So anyway, we did want to thank you one more time for your time, your attention, for hearing me out. I don't know if there's time for questions or not, but I'm happy to answer them if there are. If you just advance one, yeah, thank you. The last slide just shows contact information if anyone wants to get a hold of us for whatever reason.
All right, thank you. Any questions for Barry?
I just had a question. I just wondered if you had a waiting list. This is Lisa. I wondered if people had to wait several days or weeks, or does it depend on your staffing?
We don't have a waiting list. People call, well, I shouldn't say that. For some specialties, we do have a short waiting list. But in general, they leave a message that they need an appointment. Someone will call back to talk to them about what they need. Maybe it's one, maybe it's several providers they need. And I would say anywhere from a week to maybe 3 at the very outside, an appointment is made to serve them.
Thank
So
you.
Hopefully that helps.
Yep, thank you.
Alderperson Jensen.
Thanks, Barry.
Yeah.
My question is, do you feel that the 20,000 is your shortfall in the your ability to raise money?
I think that's a good way of putting it. It's definitely not our whole budget, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, that's about the shortfall we're anticipating.
And you're relating that to the COVID, obviously.
Yes,
Okay.
it is.
Yeah. Okay. I guess that's good. Thank you.
All right.
And I just maybe I should have started this out with a qualifier. I'm not a doctor or a medical person at all. So several of you, like Fred, and Greg, are very well aware of that. So I'm speaking here as a lay volunteer for the clinic. We accept volunteers from all over.
We did call you professor.
Excuse me?
We did call you professor.
You did. Yeah, you shouldn't have called. Yeah, he's right. It wasn't doctors, professor. But these are the answers to the best of my knowledge, and I think that's an accurate statement that you made.
Okay. President Hirsch.
First, thank you for your great organization. I think it really helps our local community a great deal. My question is, going forward, so you requested $20,000 for this year to kind of, because of the shortfall through the last couple of years, do you anticipate needing more monies going forward, or are you self-sufficient usually?
We're working on getting better at fundraising is my answer. We're going year by year. We have enough for now. We don't have a big bank account. We don't have a future nest egg waiting for us. So I don't know how to answer that. So I hope we're getting better at fundraising, but maybe we will need help in the future. I don't know for sure. I can't predict.
Okay.
We're doing a lot more grant writing and fundraising than we used to.
Okay.
And if anyone's really good at that, we are looking for volunteers.
Excellent. That's great to hear.
Okay. Thank you for the question. That was a good one.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you very much for what you do.
And for the people on the phone, there's some brochures I have up here for you. If you don't have one, I can send an electronic copy to someone if they would like that. So.
Sure, you can send that to myself or the clerk,
Okay.
and we'll make sure everybody gets it.
Okay. Thank you very much.
All right,
Appreciate
thank
your
you.
time and attention.
All right, so the next presentation is from Stoughton Yoga.
Hi, good evening. You hear me okay? Okay, good. My name is Bonnie Mesger. I'm on the Stoughton Yoga Board, and I'm joined by 4 other colleagues from the board. So we have half of our board is here tonight. And thank you for presenting the slides up there. So very similar to the prior presentation, which I would add is a great segue, yoga is wonderful for your physical and mental well-being. And so we'd like to talk to you tonight about who we are, who we serve and what we provide, and what we are requesting, and then why it matters to Stoughton. In the packet we sent is the presentation along with last 3 years of our annual report. So you're welcome to look through that when you have a chance. And so thank you for the opportunity to present. Next slide, please. I'll talk about who we are and what we offer. So we are a nonprofit 501c3 charity since 2016. We were founded by Marlene Widra, our founder, and our Chief Operations Officer, who's behind me here. We are run also by 7 community volunteer board members, and then Marlene also sits on the board as a non-voting member. We meet every other month. Our mission at Stoughton Yoga is to ensure that the Stoughton community has access to quality, affordable, inclusive yoga, meditation, and mindfulness classes. Unlike some of the popular things that you see in print and on TV, we're not about like having to turn yourself inside out or into a pretzel or anything like that. It's about the physical well-being, and anyone who comes to yoga is encouraged to do it safely and in a way that works right for them. And all of our teachers are yoga certified, and they are independent contractors who use our studio. And we've got a wonderful array of teachers right now. We serve a wide range of the community across all age groups, all physical abilities, all incomes. We have a very strong belief in diversity, equity, and inclusion. We even have a sort of a statement that we have written about that. I'll just read a couple of excerpts on that the word yoga means union, body and mind, and also our own togetherness. The tradition and true spirit of yoga is one grounded in kindness, in giving, and awareness that we're all connected. We value unity within diversity and recognize that with increasing diversity in our community, that provides multiple benefits for all of us. So we seek to increase access and participation, and if we ever encounter barriers to access, we intend to do something about that. The next slide will tell you a little bit more about our classes and sort of how we operate. We do not require membership fees, and we do not require contracts or dues. So as a yoga student, for example, you could sign up for a series of 5 weeks, 5 classes, 1 per week, and you're paying only $8 a class. That's a very, very low price compared to many studios, especially in the Madison area. If you wanted to just come and register for 1 class, that's $10, a little bit more. So if you ever want to come try us out, you're welcome to just register for 1. And currently, I mentioned we have a wide array of class types, from very gentle and slow flowing, like a slow flow it's called, to a much stronger vinyasa, faster breathing, moving faster type classes. So a wide range to fit your needs. Also different times of the day and evening. We do have a lot of evening classes that are very popular, and weekend classes. We have about 14 per week right now, classes, and average about 10 students per class. So roughly we're serving around 140 yoga students per week in Stoughton Yoga. We also, at certain times of the year, offer mindfulness or meditation classes, because that's a great complement to what we do. So the key highlights we also offer a weekly pay what you can class, and that's literally, if you cannot pay, we do not turn you away, and you are allowed, we welcome with open arms to come to that. That requires about $3,000 a year for us to manage and maintain those weekly classes. We do get a few donations from that, but in order to make sure that we can continue offering them, that $3,000 is one of the things we're asking for. We also offer scholarships for students who need money, for example, to pay for a non-pay what you can. And we can take on an as-per-need and an as-request basis for some scholarship funding. And then, very importantly, we are throughout the community. If you've ever seen our website, we offer almost monthly. Well, during the pandemic, it got cut way back. But prior to that, we have what we call free community gift classes. And those are things like classes for teens. We've visited schools. We partner with the library to do Stoughton Sunday yogas, classes that we offer, but it's in partnership with the library. Recently, we were at the Stoughton National Night Out event, and we offered a free yoga class for kids. And then in upcoming next month, in September, we'll be partnering with the Stoughton Wellness Coalition for a series of 3 classes offered then. And then also, I think we're actually venturing into one of the local physical therapists that works near us is going to also help us offer a class on how to, or on balance. The idea is balance and physical balance for your body. So there's a free class coming up on that too. So look at our website and see those. Next slide, please. Okay. So the request that we're asking for is we're giving a range, 3,000 to 5,000. We would welcome with much gratitude. The 3,000 would help us underwrite and keep alive the Pay What You Can classes to make those available, and that would be for a full year. And then an additional 2,000 would help us fund the community gift classes, and that's what I just described to you. About 30 of those could be funded with an additional 2,000, and that averages about 2 or 3 classes per month. So the way we are right now funded is mainly through donations. We have individual donors and sustainers. We do get grants. We have business partnerships. Many of the local businesses in Stoughton have been generous with us. And then we also have done some fundraisers. I don't know if you remember, we used to have one at Wendigo, the great chili bake-off we would do in February. Cook-off, not bake-off. We would do chili, and then we have done a bake sale as well, too. So, we're venturing into some interesting spaces that way. But those are usually fun, but not our main source of funding. We have received some grants. So, for example, last year, Dane County Relief helped us with $2,500. That grant actually paid for one of our employees who was furloughed. We have 2 employees, our chief operating officer and our webmaster. They receive a small stipend per month, but during the pandemic, one went on furlough and basically just worked voluntarily. So that grant from Dane County helped us with basically paying wages for that employee. And then we received another $500 from Stoughton Area Community Foundation, and that's helped us to pay for props that are more cleanable. We paid more attention now to, making sure we can use sanitary wipes and things like that. Our yoga teachers, as I mentioned before, are independent contractors, so they do pay us rent for the use of the studio. Part of that equation, though, is that if once they get the money that they are owed, then the rent would come to us. A little bit of that would come to us as rent, but then they also make the money from the classes. I hope I didn't mix that up too much. Marlene can explain it better than I do. So next slide, please. For our expenses, I mentioned we have 2 employees, very small stipends per month. I mean, basically, to run Stoughton Yoga is a lot of volunteer work. And we also have to keep, a lot of the scheduling has to be kept up. And then other expenses are the supplies, the maintenance, materials, insurance we have to carry. And then our biggest expense by far is our monthly rent. That's our largest expense. You may remember, if you're familiar with us, that we used to have a studio in Main Street. It was above Wendigo, and it was a lovely studio, but we outgrew it. And that was great. It was due to high demand, and it was right before the pandemic. I mean, literally the month before we knew that was going to happen, we had chosen a newer, bigger space over at Silverado Point. And we're so excited about it, and we're thinking, how are we going to shift from one to the other? And then the pandemic came right at that time. So we closed temporarily. We paused classes, shifted our effort into getting the new space ready and very nicely decorated. So we were then, during the pandemic, we did then have this bigger space that gradually, like in the fall of that year, 2020, we started coming back. But it was a room like with just a very few people in it because we had to be spaced out physically. We also offered classes at the parks, at Mant Park a few times. And we produced some videos, free videos, in partnership again with the library, as well as some of our teachers, so that during the pandemic, we kept some of the yoga alive as best we could. So it did cause us to have to adapt, but the good news is we did it. We did not have to close like other studios did, and we're very, very grateful to the donors that did help kept us floating during that time. We still aren't back up to capacity, though. We were anticipating at the new studio, really having maybe double the capacity as the old one, but we aren't up to that point. But it's going in the right direction, so it's not dire. And last slide, please. So why does it matter? It's like we're talking about health and wellness. Yoga is very, very beneficial for both physical and mental well-being and community well-being, I would say. It certainly helps people on an individual level, but the number of community connections and friendships, as well as the partnerships that we've been able to build, has been really, really valuable. And we really intend to continue along this path, keeping our classes affordable. We really don't want to have to raise rates. Because when they start going up, people that would normally want to come would then drop out and not. So we're dedicated to that idea, to be able to offer scholarships to folks in need, and then our important free community classes. Some really, really fun things that we do, especially also with kids. And then during the pandemic, we offered some classes to the healthcare workers and some EMS people, knowing that yoga can be helpful for those folks as well. So we're very grateful for our generous donors. We will continue to look for other funding sources through grants, and just look forward to staying strong and viable. So I've told you who we are, what we're asking for, why it matters, and I thank you for your time. And if you have questions, I will ask some of my colleagues to come on up, and we can answer anything you would like to know.
All right, are there any questions?
You want to learn how to do down dog?
You're going to demonstrate right here?
Okay, thank you
All right,
very much.
Thank you very much. All right, and the next presentation is coming from Director Gillingham in our Human Resources Risk Management Department. Are you driving this one, Dave?
We're actually not going to do a PowerPoint for this one because I'm
Okay.
going to kill them with PowerPoint on my next one. So I actually just have a letter that I did send out to you, and I just wanted to read through that and see if you guys have any questions at this point in time in regards to what our request is. But many of our neighboring communities are requesting ARPA funds for their staff as bonuses and increases. And looking at the situation that we're in for the city's budget and potential increases for 2023, anything that we can do to supplement that, I think, is going to be greatly appreciated by the city staff. And I'm talking specifically in regards to the ARPA funds from the standpoint of COVID, as well as the situation that we're in right now with trying to retain staff because of the Great Resignation, which is real, and it's affected the city of Stoughton. So what I'm asking for is those employees that are currently employed and worked during the height of COVID, which would have been 2021, I'm requesting that they receive a one-time retention bonus, and that would include our full-time regular staff, our part-time, not our seasonals, and then our emergency service volunteers. So that would include EMS and fire. These employees adjusted to an ever-changing work environment, which included providing city services during a pandemic, and they didn't miss a beat. Citywide services continued as the employees were transitioning and were adapting the day-to-day responsibilities to an environment that protected the employee and citizens from COVID-19. I don't know if you're aware, but city trucks were parked at different locations throughout the city to ensure employees were able to properly social distance and stop potential cross-contamination so that we could continue to provide services to our constituents. Some office staff were forced to work in the office or from home because their position was deemed essential. All employees were working in some type of capacity. Each department worked extremely hard to continue to provide some type of service to our constituents. The senior center started online programming, something that never existed before, and the feedback that we received was incredible. They were able to take vacations together online, see things that they weren't able to look up on their own. There were lots of fun games that were being played. This was definitely out of the box thinking. They didn't have to do this. They could have stayed home and not worked, but they chose to work and provide services to all of us. The access for those employees to be set up, their phones forwarded, or those that were working in the group to allow them to work remotely, placed an extreme demand on the IT department, and they did not falter. Some of the employees were put in a difficult position because of the nature of their role. They were asked and put at risk because of the nature of their job. This includes EMS, fire, police, and several other key employees and departments. They feared the unknown. Would they catch COVID? Would they bring COVID home to their loved ones? It was all an unknown at that time. As we transitioned back to the standard of COVID, city services in each department had to take into consideration how they would have citizens and staff together, yet make sure the proper measures were in place to stop the spread of the virus. So we came back trying to figure out how do we reincorporate the citizens in. We had barriers that were made by the maintenance department, masks were supplied. These are all things that you couldn't just go out and buy at that time. We had to come up with creative solutions to figure out how to make this happen. Detailed plans were designed to ensure employee and constituent safety. The next thing we were faced with is this great resignation. The city has been faced with difficulties retaining and recruiting staff. I've never seen so few applicants in my 30 years of being an HR director. It's tough. It's even tougher to keep people. A perfect example was Sunday night. I got a email from a lineman, a professional journeyman, telling me that he got another job, $10 an hour more, and was done effective immediately. This is not odd. This has become the norm. We need to be able to pay these employees. We need to reward them when they do things that are moving the organization forward. I'm currently working on reviewing compensation for the city staff and have met with each of the directors and have compared the cities and villages' compensation report against what our wages currently are. And because the city did not fund the Springstead study, some of these positions are falling well behind in market rates. When we're losing staff and bringing new people in, we're having to pay the new person more because we're that far behind. So why don't we reward those that are here, give them something right now through the Arba funds as a thank you, and try to do things on the compensation side when we get to that point with the 2023 budget for the city. My request would have been to increase the wages for our staff, but I understand that this is a one-time funding source, and our employees, we hope, are here with us the following years. So that's not realistic. So the ARPA funds to increase wages just would not be sustainable for us. Therefore, I'm requesting that the City of Stoughton Common Council recognize the hard work, the dedication of the city staff, and provide a one-time retention COVID bonus to the current active city employees that are full-time, regular part-time, emergency service volunteers. To qualify, the employee must have worked during 21, as I told you before. They must be currently employed. We're not going to pay people that were here before. This is retention. We're paying those that are here now and work through that. The retention bonus would be $500 to the regular part-time staff and emergency service volunteers, $1,000 to the full-time staff, and then $2,000 to your department heads. The total amount would be $174,393, which would include FICA. And I ask that you show your support for the City of Stoughton employees by supporting this request. Before I close, there's one other thing I wanted to read to you. I don't know if you noticed, I have something in much larger font. I wanted to make sure you were all aware. Allowable uses of ARPA funds per federal regulations. Providers may use the ARPA grant funds on one or more of the following categories: staff expenses, personnel costs, benefits, premium pay, recruitment, and retention. And that's what I'm asking for. Employee incentives such as increased wages, premium pay, and one-time bonuses. 25% of the award must be allocated to the incentives category. So, thank you, and we appreciate your consideration.
All right, any questions for Director Gillingham? President Hirsch?
Sure. Thanks, AJ. This is a great proposal. I just have a question. In one part of your letter, you're saying that, you know, the emergency service volunteers through the EMS and fire were like kind of the first line workers, the ones that are taking the biggest risk, yet the pay is the least for the people that actually took the biggest risk. And I was just wondering how you came up with those numbers and why did you not feel that they deserve more because they took a bigger risk?
Because they're volunteer employees. So we put them in that category. It wasn't based on the amount of risk at all. I mean, that would be a different way of categorizing it, and we could do that. But we thought our employees that were working less would be paid less. So that was the thought process behind that. You have volunteers that may work 20 hours a year, 100 hours a year. There are some that work 100 in a month. So it just depends there. So we did not really have we don't have the manpower to go through and look at everybody's hours and determine that. If that's something that would be more palatable to you, we'd be more than happy to make that happen. And we'd probably partner with Dave's department to see if they could help us through that.
Yeah, we'll see how far this gets, but
Okay.
that would be something I'd be interested in.
Alderperson Hunt?
I was wondering, AJ, how many individuals will this impact?
If
You
you
have
have
a nice-
Fred, I can give you that in a separate email and send it to everybody. I have all the figures. I did not bring those with for the presentation.
All right, that's fine. I know it's quite a number.
It's about 150 or 170, somewhere in there.
Okay.
Just a rough ballpark, but I'll pull them.
Okay.
All right, any other questions or comments?
Yeah, just kind of on top of President Hirsch's comments, I also, that kind of struck a chord with me to see if maybe across the board between employee and directors and those different 3 levels that you mentioned with the different amounts of compensation, maybe those could be reconsidered to even it out, or to kind of take an approach. Just hard to see the most exposed people getting the least, or kind of along the same lines of what President Hirsch indicated. Thank you.
In response to that, Rachel, I think what we would have to do is look at the number of hours that those individuals are working. Because like I said, you may have somebody on the roster, but they may not have worked. So we would definitely be able to go in and look at it that way. Thank you for
Yeah,
the feedback.
kind of with the level, with like director level getting the most, that it'd be nice if it could be like equalized.
It was based on the amount of the impact on the directors during this. I mean, we worked through it, the whole thing. So whether our staff was at home, we were having to come up with how these plans work and implement those. So that's why when the mayor and I met, we said that would be the team that gets the most, is the fact that they were never off. We were working in some cases almost around the clock to make sure that we could get things up and running and going. So the impact there was absolutely incredible, what we were doing. But also at the staff level. I mean, there were employees trying to, figure out how do we make sure that the snow is taken care of? How do we make sure that the streets are cleared? So, I mean, I definitely understand that, but that was our thought process, was your directors were the ones trying to figure out how to keep this machine moving. And that's what happened, and that's why we said 2 there. But if you guys are not in agreement with that, I'm not married to any of this. This was just a basic proposal, and we can look at making changes.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
I think just a suggestion.
Go ahead, Greg.
If we decide that this is something that we wanted to do, we could certainly look at how that money would be distributed at that time. AJ could do some research for us.
Absolutely.
But obviously, it doesn't have to be paid out right away. The schedule, the payment schedule is what, 2024, 25 that we have to pay out?
Well, if you're,
Greg, we can't hear what you're saying.
Oh, the pay schedule, it wouldn't
He
have to
was
be done
talking to
right.
the mic.
Sorry. It wouldn't have to be done right away, that money can be dispersed. Let's see, what was the schedule again, 25?
well, you've got a couple different things there. We've got to appropriate the money by 12/31 of '24,
24.
pay it out by 12/31 of '26.
Yep.
But if, and I'm just throwing out for conversation, if you're going to say, we want to pay this out in '24, then you're kind of hurting the retention issue.
Yep.
Plus, now you're extending it because under the current guidelines, you have to have worked here in '21 and then be here when the payout occurs. So you're saying you got to wait 3 years to get the payout. Again, just conversation about '24.
Things we can work out.
Right.
Correct.
All right. Anybody else have any questions or comments? All right, thank you, AJ.
You're welcome.
Okay, next item is Stoughton Utilities compensation study results and implementation. And looks like somebody else is driving this, so that makes my
Yep,
job
I've got
easier.
Dave doing it.
And who's presenting?
I am.
You are?
Yep.
Okay, whenever you're ready.
Okay. So many of you may be aware that over the past 2 years, Jill, Director Weiss, the head of facilities, and myself have been working on a realignment for the utilities staff specifically, keeping in mind that the utilities staff is funded differently than city staff. City staff is funded by taxpayers, and your utility staff is funded by the ratepayers. So keep that in mind as we go through. Next slide. So our current structure, we have open positions that are waiting for realignment to hire. So we've specifically held off hiring positions because of the not wanting to hire somebody for a position that was previously open. We knew we had to do a restructure and get the right position and the right duties in those jobs. So we did a complete reconstruction, but we also have those open positions that we haven't filled. So that's causing existing staff, which is my next bullet, to have to wear many hats, including the responsibilities that are not reflected in their current position description. So this staff has been just incredible as we've gone through the past 2 years, taking on additional duties and doing it without any type of compensation being given to them.
Yeah, we kind of did the last time.
The current structure also lacks redundancy and backup. And with that being said, in the event that someone's out, we don't always have backup for that. We have to make do with what we currently have. Because again, we were holding off to make sure that when we did hire, we were hiring for the right position and the right duties. So again, there's no succession plan in place at this time, and we do have 2 employees in key positions that could actually retire today. So with that being said, next slide, we started working on the realignment, and the position descriptions have either been updated to reflect the current duties, or new position descriptions have been created based on what our organizational need is actually at this time. Go ahead. So here is the Stoughton Utilities organizational chart for 2019, keeping in mind the population's at 13,097. At that time, we had 26 Stoughton Utilities employees, including finance. Next slide. 2022, we're going to have hopefully 25 Stoughton Utilities employees once we fill those empty positions, with a population of 13,285. As we go through this, you're going to see there's some color coding on that organizational chart, and we will specifically be talking about that. The green positions on there are just updated position descriptions that will reflect what the person is currently doing and what we think would make most sense for this organization to be able to be successful and efficient. The blue are newly created position descriptions. As you can see, there's a chunk of those positions in there. And then the red is a future revision that needs to be handled at a different time, and that's the payroll person who works for both the city payroll and the utilities payroll as well. You'll also notice, I know this is real small on the screen, but for those of you that have it on your computers there, there's also reporting changes as we go through this, and we'll talk about that as we go through each of the job descriptions. But as we went through this process, it was determined that we need to better align how the departments are structured, who they're reporting to, and then taking a lot of that pressure off Director Weiss having to be over and dealing with the day-to-day of all of the functions. So there's some changes there, and we're going to better utilize our assistant director, which is Brian Hoops, and have him getting more involved in each of those departments and having some visibility there. Next slide. Jill, if you want to take this one, if you're on.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, AJ.
You're welcome.
With the proposal that we have here for the alignment, back in 1991, as we looked at, we had about 9,000 population. Now in 22, we've got a population of 13,200 and so many. The point of the slide really, though, is to highlight that the population growth over that time has been 150%. So we went from, about 9,000 to over 13,000. In our structure in 1991, we actually had 28 staff. What our proposal for 22 is a staff of 25. So we're actually decreasing our staff level of 11% over that time period. If we look at our structure from 19, what we're proposing for 22 is we actually have 6 vacancies right now. What this proposal, though, is to fill 5 of those. So we're actually continuing to reduce our staff.
So the plan there that Director Weiss really focused on as we were going through this was making sure that the utility is functioning in an efficient manner and utilizing staff to the best of our abilities, those that are existing, and building positions that will add value to the department as a whole, as well as creating that redundancy and succession planning that we were talking about. So this, when we were looking back at the org chart, you would notice on there's several positions that say we're not going to fill it right now. Those are potential that in the event that we get to a point where we need to add a staff member, we will fill at that point, and you will have approved it, so we don't have to bring all this back to you and try to reorganize again or do another realignment. So that's the purpose of this. So this will take us into the future, and we won't be back in front of you in a couple of years. Next slide. So starting with the blue existing positions, personnel with new PD. So this is someone who had a existing position description. It was a distribution system coordinator. We newly created this position following the departure of Superintendent Grady as he retired. So we looked at that position and determined what do we need to do with those position assignments, and we looked at it, assessed it. Director Weiss took a look at it and determined that the position needed to be based on the realignment and the responsibilities. So the superintendent position has now been eliminated, and the duties have been disseminated to others, or they have been eliminated. So it was a full review of that position. Next slide. The next one was is our asset and facilities coordinator. Again, this was an existing position. It was newly created position. The position will replace the engineering technician position, and the incumbent is already performing the duties of the asset and facilities coordinator position. But looking at the duties and going through and doing our due diligence, we were able to determine what would be the best use of this type of position, and making sure that, again, we have that redundancy and we have the right responsibilities in that position. We didn't just copy what we had, we actually made the changes. Next slide. Education and outreach coordinator for marketing. Again, this is a new position. The position will replace our customer service technician position description. The incumbent is already performing the duties of the education and outreach coordinator position, This is one of those that I was talking about where someone has taken on the responsibilities and is doing the job, has the qualifications, but the position description hasn't been updated. Next slide. The next new one is our billing and metering supervisor position. This will replace the existing billing and metering specialist position, and the incumbent is performing the duties. Already, the staff are coming to this individual. They have been for several years, but we have not updated the the position description to allow this employee to have that supervisory title to reflect what that employee is actually doing. So, real important that we get this alignment in place. So, employees that are doing those duties, number one, have a position description that explains to them what they're supposed to be doing, what their expectations are, and also that we're compensating them for what they're doing. Again, tying into retention and the importance of being able to keep staff here. Accurate position description, correct compensation, real key. Next one. This is another one that's new. This is going to be our customer service technician revamped. It will include collections. The full-time collections position was eliminated through attrition. The employee's no longer with us, so we thought we'll take advantage of that at the same time, do a complete reorg, and have this position be both customer service and some collections, and the position will report to that new position, which is that billing and metering supervisor. Next one. The next position is our journeyman meter technician position. This will replace the operations specialist position, which does not meet the needs of the utilities at this point in time anymore. This position actually also was helping out in the wastewater area, which just didn't make sense, pulling the employee in multiple directions, again, not compensating them for what they were doing. So this position will now fall solely under the billing and metering supervisor. And again, we'll have that created automatic redundancy here to be able to have good backup. The next new position will be our apprentice metering technician. This is going to remain vacant until there's a need. So this is one of those positions that in the future, we will, when we learn that our billing and metering employee is going to be retiring, we'll fill the apprentice position and then have him or her start to learn what the responsibilities are, and hopefully by the time that individual retires, we'll have somebody ready to take their place, creating that redundancy, and we'll start the next process as we move through. Any questions on what I've talked about so far? Okay, next slide. Apprentice operator, these are existing, that'll be the wastewater. There's a need for an apprentice operator due to our structure change. We need to get somebody in there who's going to start learning the ropes. The advanced certified operator lab technician is a position that we had an individual retire, and that position has not been filled. So this is one of those that Jill was talking about on that prior slide that we held off and waiting for this reorg to make sure that we have the positions where they need to be. The duties have been realigned, creating the apprentice operator position. This position will report into the wastewater division. Next slide. Okay, we're going to switch over now to the green on the org chart. These are just updated position descriptions. I'm not going to put you to sleep with these, but the entire electric system division, which includes the supervisor, which is currently a vacant position, the lead journeyman line worker, which is also a vacant position, the journeyman line workers, plural, and the apprentice line worker. Those positions have all been updated. You have the red lines. I sent all those out to you for all of those positions, and you can see what the changes were. Again, it was making sure that the position reflects what our expectations are of our staff. Next slide. The next updates that we did, again, these are green, so they're just updated position descriptions. This is for the wastewater system division. And we updated the supervisor position, the advanced certified operator, the basic certified operator, and then just a regular operator. All of those have been updated. You saw the red lines. And on there, we made sure the positions are reflecting what we want our staff to be doing, that they clearly understand their expectations. Okay? Last one is the water system division. And in that one, we updated the supervisor, we updated the certified advanced operator, the basic certified operator, and then the regular operator as well. So you see some commonalities between those three that we did the updates on. Go ahead. Last one, or no, not, we're still working through, sorry. Finance manager. The position description for this one, you guys saw back in 2021, and you updated it. This was when we were filling the position that had been vacated. And we brought the finance position back from being both utilities and city into a utilities finance manager position. So the updates were made at that time, and we did fill the position in 2021. So no need to make changes there. Next one is our assistant utilities director. As I talked about the org chart before, if you remember, I said that this position is taking on more. The individual or the incumbent in this position is going to be over those different divisions that were in green. So that's the water, the wastewater, and the electric linemen. And in that reporting structure, the position was being paid before we made those changes as a non-exempt position, which means they were being paid overtime. So we've now moved that into a professional category because of all the reporting. And it's now, if you accept the changes tonight, that would be an exempt position where it doesn't qualify for overtime. The duties were updated to reflect all the changes that we just talked about and have that assistant director working with each of those departments. And the last thing being, the employee is already performing these duties. He's been with the utilities for many years, has increased his knowledge through learning the utility, being there, working his way up. And I think this one here is going to be a good change for all of us to have that individual between Jill and each of the divisions. Go ahead. Next one is our utilities director. We made some changes on that one. It's been a while since we looked at Jill's position, and there were some minor changes made as shown in the red line version. Next slide. The red, as I described to you before, that's a future position that we're going to review. We hope to do it quickly within the next couple of weeks. I've already talked with Director Weiss about it, and she's already started getting the wheels in motion. But the accounting specialist, at this time, we don't have a change to the position description, therefore we're not touching anything also with compensation. So let's hit the next one. Next part of this is the compensation and funding, and I just want to remind you that the budget was approved for this in 2021, so you've already approved the funding. The dollars were carried over into 2022 and will cover the implementation as well as the compensation plan. Because we budgeted at the beginning of the year, the total funding is there. We're implementing at the middle or towards the end of the year. Therefore, less dollars will be used, and we'll be able to carry that over into 2023. Any questions on that portion? Okay, next slide. So how was the compensation determined? The information was pulled from the following sources. So we used MEUW, we looked at Alliant, we looked at APPA, WPPI, WPS. We also looked at other like communities and took a look at their compensation. As we went through, we looked for like positions. So it's not taking a journeyman in Milwaukee and comparing them to a journeyman in Stoughton, Wisconsin as a utility, not the same position. So we used like positions. So if you look on there, as we went through, we were looking at municipalities that had like job descriptions, and then we also looked at community sizes and took that into consideration as well. Next slide. So they had to meet 2 or 3 of the qualifiers to be considered for compensation when we put this model together. So the location, they ended up having to be within 30 miles of Stoughton or provide opportunity for advancement, which was looking at Evansville as an example. That would not be an opportunity for advancement for one of our journeyman linemen. They have their own journeyman linemen, but their system is not as involved as ours is, and nor would they have the opportunity because it's a much smaller community. And we also said that they must be comparable to the utility of Stoughton. If the actual entity was not a like match, we took them out. So that's for all of the positions, not just the electrical line. We're looking at everyone. Next slide. Next slide. So, you were sent a copy of the compensation study results, and we have given you exactly what the proposal is, so you can take a look at it ahead of time. I asked if you had questions to let me know before. Probably looks real similar to what you saw with the Springstead study. It's a real basic compensation plan. We've done our due diligence by checking and looking into our neighboring communities, looking at our competition. Like I told you, lost a Journeyman lineman on Sunday night, $10 an hour going back into the union. It's the way it is. The comp chart itself is based on those neighboring communities, the like 2 of the 3. So it's been vetted, fully vetted, so if you have questions, I can help you with that. And then we also put on there our apprenticeship program, if you want to touch there. So we have an apprenticeship program as well. Those are all listed out. I hope you took a look at those ahead of time, but again, all the numbers are vetted. What we need to do here is not go back and repeat what we did in 2015. Put a study in place, not funded. We've already got that. We can check that box. We're funded. But we need to keep it current and be able to say that we're staying in a competitive environment with our staff and with our numbers. We know we're not on the city side. Unfortunately, we don't have that luxury of being based on the payers, the ratepayers. On the city side, you're dealing with the taxpayers. It's a different pool of money. The ratepayers, we can ask for more. So I'm very excited that we can offer this to our utilities employees. We'll soon be talking about our 2023 compensation plan for the city employees, but I don't want to blur the line here tonight. We have a fully funded plan. We have a comp chart, a comp matrix that has been fully vetted, and we have gone through every one of our job descriptions inside and out to make sure they accurately reflect what we need from those employees and put an org chart in place to guarantee that in the future we can run in an efficient manner. So next slide. Jill, if you'd like to talk a little bit about the funding, please.
I would, thank you. So in 2021, you'd approved the allocation. Basically, there was $240,000 set aside in the budget for wages, looking at this entire plan. We didn't move it forward as quickly as we would have liked for a variety of different reasons, and really wanted to go through a process and make sure that it was vetted and we were very confident in it. Due to that, we came back in our 22 budget, had the $240,000 allocated. What I really want to highlight here is that, you know, as we put those monies in place, that didn't take away from anything else that we had planned. So our CIP, our operations, our maintenance, all of that will continue to move forward as we've always planned. When we actually did our trending in 21, this wage adjustment was included in there. Also in 22, as we looked out into the future for our 5-year, exactly, you know, those rate adjustments that we talked about, this was all included with that. The wage studies that we, or excuse me, the rate studies that we've done, this was included as well. So basically from a budgetary standpoint, all of those monies have been allocated and were approved through the budget process. And if we've looked at rates and we plan to move those forwards, this has been included as well.
Thank you. Next slide. So why should this be recommended to council? That slide could have been taken out. This was actually the same presentation that we used for the Personnel Committee and the Utilities Committee, but it's a good closing slide for us as well. So my apologies for the header. The structure allows the utility, like I talked about and have mentioned several times, efficiently. It allows us to recruit and retain. And as I've told you, I'm having difficulties recruiting, I'm having difficulties retaining talented staff. The employees are performing duties that are out of the scope of their current positions. I mean, they've been doing this for several years and we've had no complaints. Doesn't mean that we take advantage of it. We need to make this right. Compensation was already approved through the budget. Existing compensation is not market competitive, and I hope I've been able to have you understand that. We've had employee departures. I can't push that enough with you. Poor employee morale from it. And then the last thing is we're becoming a training ground for all of the other employers around us, which is extremely expensive. Not just the recruiting aspect of it, but like I said, why would we pay somebody who leaves that next person coming in, that new incumbent, more than the person who left that had all the institutional knowledge. It makes no sense. We've created our own monster here. We need to correct it. Next slide. Any questions?
President Hirsch?
Thank you, AJ. This is great. I just have a question. When those blue categories, those new positions, and there's currently somebody that's actually performing those duties right now, are those people going to have to reapply for their positions, or are they just going to move into these new positions?
They're qualified for the positions. They've been doing them for multiple years. So as we went through this, we looked at, I personally went through and looked at those employees' qualifiers. So the person that's moving into marketing, she started doing that because she had a background in it and her education ties into it. So that's why it naturally went that direction for her to help out, which ended up becoming more of a full-time job. So she was really hired as customer service, but ended up doing marketing. So she's qualified for the position. If we were to have that employee have to reapply for that position, they could potentially lose their job. So the fact that she's had several years of being able to prove herself, I think that that is the person that should get that position. And I'm very passionate about that because we've taken advantage of multiple years of these employees, having them, out of their goodness of their heart, take on these duties, not complain, not be compensated. Boy, what a slap in the face to have to know.
I just didn't know, because I'm coming from a university part where they would make you have to reapply. So I'm just seeing to make sure that they don't have to reapply, and I'm with you. So
Perfect. Thank you.
I just wanted to make sure that they didn't have to reapply after they, in that.
Great question. Thank you, Regina. I appreciate you clarifying that.
Any follow-up? All right, anybody else have any questions? None in the room. Anyone in Zoom world have any questions?
Well, I'd ask for your support. I hope I've been able to correctly depict what has been happening here, and would ask that you please vote yes for this and give us what we need to do to make the utility be able to move forward in an efficient manner and reward those employees that have been working real hard doing things outside of the scope of their position. So I ask that you vote yes.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
That takes us into our business items. The first item is the consent agenda, and I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Move to approve.
A motion by Jensen, is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Caravello. Anybody like anything acted on separately from the consent agenda? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 And any opposed? That motion carries. Old business is discussion and possible action regarding American Rescue Plan Act award process. I'm going to turn this over to President Hirsch.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to give you guys an update that the mayor and finance director and Alderperson Reeves and I are meeting tomorrow to go over the whole spreadsheet to make sure that everything is captured, and then we'll start emailing around to see if what are the best dates for you guys for a next committee of the whole meeting. Dave, we don't have any other anticipated applications at this time?
At this time, no, but that is one of my questions to the council. Do you wish to stop applications at this point, or do you wish to continue to receive them?
Personally, I think what we can do, I think we had talked about leaving some money for future years behind. We can cut that. Our decision will be based on what has been applied for now, and anybody else that comes forward, we listen to them, but they get into possibly next year's potential if we have money left over. Does that make sense? I mean, I don't want to speak for you guys. Let me know if that, Greg?
I'd agree with that. I think that right now we should cut it off at where we are. And then if there's anything in the future, we'll look at that for next year.
So just to make sure I understand, continue to put new presentations on the agendas, but inform those individuals or entities that it will be in phase 2 for potential payment.
I don't think that they would need to go onto the agenda. I would think that if you just inform them that they'd be in phase 2 when and if that happens.
Well, I guess, I mean, I think there was discussion, we'd have some money saved for a year. I guess maybe not put them on the agenda now, let us get us through this round of funding, and maybe in 6 months, we get the remaining ones and start listening to them. But I don't think we should fill up the agenda going forward until we figure out what we're doing with everybody that's given
So
it.
restating, just to make sure I understand right, no additional presentations, but I will tentatively start scheduling in April for more presentations.
I think that would be wise. I mean, the people in the room are nodding their heads. Are the people on Zoom nodding your heads? Ben, you have a
Yeah.
question?
We had talked about forthcoming request from sustainability with the timeline of our survey going out. I think that this plan would still work for that. Not speaking for the committee and their opinions, but from my feeling of how it's going, I think that would give us some time to really take the community's input into consideration and put together a proposal that would really maximize the impact of the dollars.
Okay, so the timeline works for you. Joyce, you have your hand up.
Aside from however many points of interest accrue in 6 months. I mean, inflation.
Okay. Joyce?
Yeah, I guess just a comment. I sent the finance director some thoughts on ARPA distribution today, as was requested. And I'm happy to go along with this. I would just say that I'm going to have to modify my suggestion because it would be influenced by the number of people who apply. So that's okay, but I just wanted to mention it now so it won't seem so mysterious later.
Okay, you are being very mysterious, Joyce, and we're all kind of wondering what you're proposing.
Well, I don't mind. Dave, do you mind if I just mention it very briefly?
It's your proposal.
One moment here. Let me put my camera on so I'm a real person. But I had a Solomon solution, which is to take the amount of money available and take the number of people who applied and divide the money available by the number of requests, because so far I haven't seen anyone who isn't deserving. I think that would be one thing just to consider or fold into a different one. I don't really see a way to rank these fine organizations at this point either. So that would be a Solomon solution to me.
Okay, so that's a procedural thing, and thank you for your suggestion. It's not a proposal of funding requests. Okay, it's a procedural, and we'll discuss it. Okay. Any other comments? I mean, I'm still going off of what we talked about last meeting, is to create a new spreadsheet, have a committee of the whole meeting, and start talking about how to, process with funding and, taking into account, Joyce, your idea, but if anybody else has other ideas of how to go forward, please get them to either Lisa or myself as soon as possible, and then we can start structuring our committee of the whole meeting. Does that seem okay? All right, lots of bobbing heads. All right, thank you.
All right, so we'll continue on with our business. And the next item is going to be Ordinance 17 of 2022. And the next two here are first readings from the Plan Commission. Alderperson Caravello.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. As you said, this is a first reading, and this is approving a planned development, general development plan for Lot 6 within 51 West Development, and this is 017 of 2022. And this is a general development plan rezone from MR10, which is multifamily residential, which was previously for four unit buildings for a total of 16 units, to 10 duplex buildings for a total of 20 units, and a change to 2-family residential zoning.
All right, and we have Chuck Elliott here. It's a first reading.
Okay.
We have Chuck Elliott here that can maybe walk us through a little bit more detail, and then if there's anything that you want to add, Rodney, go ahead, Chuck.
All right. Thank you, Mayor, and thanks to the Common Council, those present and those on Zoom. I represent David West, who is the owner of this project that we're putting together, and I've got Ron Kloss from Zanafio here that could answer any of the offsets, the setbacks, the water, the sewer, and things like that. We did a few things with our GDP, with the Planning Commission, to satisfy ambulance, fire, and setbacks to change the zoning, and they passed it on the 8th of August, 7-0. So I guess we're asking for your blessings. I guess we're here to answer any questions or any concerns that you have with the project. We feel a duplex is a better set for this area and between the single family and the residential. And by having the duplex units, you actually have 3 sides that are open for living space and windows and things like that. Plus, we've got 2 entrances to the site now, and the park is nearby, so it represents family living, probably more than a 4-unit. 4 units would require another water system in for sprinkler systems and things like that. So I think we've accommodated everything that the Plan Commission wanted, and they've passed it. So we're here just to answer any questions that you have, any concerns, anything on setback, water, sewer, roads, anything.
All right, thank you. And anything you want to add, Rodney?
I'll just remind the committee the primary change for this is really the density change and the structure change from the 4 units to the duplexes. From the 16 units to the 20 units, the specific implementation plan and detailed site plan would have to go through an SIP process with the Plan Commission after adoption of the GDP amendment.
Okay. Are there any initial thoughts or questions? Alderperson Jensen.
Yeah, my question is just one out of curiosity. Are these going to be rental units, or are they going to be single?
No, this will be a condo project. All 20 units will be a condo project. So each person will own their own individual home.
0 lot line.
Right. Basically a 0 lot line, but a condo.
Yep.
So then the public would have access to all the property around the roads, the sidewalks, the grass area, and things like that. So,
okay, thank you.
the condominium plating process requires an additional step that would be done after the development is in place.
Correct.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from alders? Alderperson Legaki.
Yes, I'm glad to hear about condos, because I've been aware that we don't have a lot of condos, and so I'm glad to hear that. Is there any sense of price range, that the duplex unit, the purchasing unit that you're looking at?
Well, I believe that we're going to be around 1,800 square feet to 19. If they wanted to finish off the lower level, they could go to about 22 to 23. These will be 2.5 baths and 2-bedroom units. And if you added the lower level, they would be 3.5 bath, 3-bedroom with a rec room down there and an office area. And I think the price range right now, we've done a preliminary bid process, and I think we'll probably be around 420 to 440, and then if you finish the lower level, it will be more.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Oh, President Hirsch.
Just because I'm always asking the question, when you are building these, are you trying to be as energy efficient and sustainable as possible? I mean, seems how we have the sustainability committee forming in Stoughton, and I know buildings are going to be should be one of their main criteria, and making sure that they're efficient with respect to heat, electricity, windows, all that. Is that
all
one
of them will be code or above. All the energy codes will be met, and we hope people will be living there long after I'm or the owner of the project is gone. So we want it to be a good project. We want it to be efficient. We look at concerns with everything from furnaces to windows to the amount of insulation in the attic. We're actually foaming the exterior of the foundation after we waterproof, so plus framing the walls inside and insulating them. So we got a double insulating package in the lower level. Plus it makes it more convenient if you want to finish it off, the stud walls are there. But by code, if we insulate it, we have to put a membrane, a breathable membrane up, so that the insulation doesn't come out and get into the air. So we do that also.
I was just wondering, with all the new initiatives coming in and a lot of the new monies becoming available, are you also going to make these condos solar ready?
They will be, a couple things we're going to do is make them ready for electric vehicles. The way the covenants or the ordinance or the condo docs, I guess, will be written is that has to be permitted by the condo association in order to do that.
What, they have to get permission to put it on solar?
Right. It won't be an initiative thing that is part of it, so it will not have solar units on the roof.
And why would you have to do that?
Who's in charge of that
Okay.
language?
We can't hear you, Ben, at all.
Who is in charge of that language? Are you able to hear me?
Yep, we can hear you now.
I can hear you fine, Ben.
Well, we have an attorney running the condo docs, and we will provide a conduit that goes up from the main box, let's say a 1.5 inch PVC up to the attic. So if in the future you need to install that, you have a vehicle, you do not have to rip open first floor, second floor walls, go into the attic, tear up insulation. You'll be able to run the wire up into the roof, and then you could add it if you wanted to.
And the roof is gonna be able to withstand
Oh,
any
yeah.
of structure quality that they could have solar panels on it.
Yeah, they're very light. I mean, they don't take any load at all.
I'm just thinking that in the future, and hopefully the Sustainability Committee will start looking at, looking at what we encourage builders to do with respect to efficiencies in new buildings.
Well, that's why maybe 1 out of 50 cars right now are electric, but we do provide that on these condos. We actually run the wire to the garage, especially if the basement's finished, then you can't get to it anymore. So we run it there, so you've got a source for the energy, and then whatever car you buy, there's different ports that you put in, so that'll be done also.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions or comments? So this is a first reading, which means it'll come back for consideration at the next city council meeting.
All right.
We appreciate you being here tonight and your patience as we went through all the presentations. Hopefully you found that valuable.
I did. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And if you have any other things, you can put it in the report, and
Sure.
we'll address it.
Yep, and if
Very
the
good.
council members come up with anything, feel free to email myself or Rodney, and we can pass that on and get your questions answered at the next meeting.
Thank you. Thank you.
Next item is going to be Ordinance 18, and this is also a first reading. Alderperson Caravello.
Yes, and as you said, this is first reading, and this is 018 of 2022, amending Chapter 30, floodplain zoning of the municipal code of the city of Stoughton. And since there's a lot to this, this is essentially just updates per state statute, but I'm sure Rodney could share further thoughts with us.
Our zoning administrator worked closely with the DNR staff to implement the required updates to the city ordinances based on the model that was put together with the DNR. So this really represents a collaborative effort between our staff and their staff to bring our floodplain zoning ordinance into compliance with the regulations that have recently been updated and became effective in March.
All right, any questions on this one? Alderperson Hunt?
I have one question. Item M, general development standards, a sizable piece of the old wording has been struck out. I was wondering why that particular item was removed.
I think it's addressed elsewhere and differently within the code, but I'll have a more refined response to that for the second reading.
Okay, thank you, Rodney.
All right. Any other questions or comments on this one?
I just have a comment.
President Hirsch.
I just have a comment that I was surprised that we actually allowed some building to be, at this day and age, to be actually built in a floodplain, a known floodplain. So that's just my comment of, seems kind of silly.
Are you looking for a response?
No.
Okay, good.
Sometimes common sense doesn't just,
Well, it just seems silly.
All right, and there again, if you have any questions for the second reading, feel free to send them on to us ahead of time so we can get them answered for you. Next item is also coming from Plan Commission. This one is R169, Alderperson Caravello.
Yes, this is R169 of 2022, approving a certified survey map to combine the parcels at 1000 and at 1022 East Street into one parcel, and I so move.
And is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Alderperson Jensen. Alderperson Caravello.
And this is approving the CSM to combine these parcels for a future building addition at this site, and interesting tidbit about this one is there's already an existing structure there that is already, it's essentially on the lot line that is between these two lots. So combining the two lots makes a lot of sense.
All right, anything you want to add, Director Shield?
Nope, I think it was covered well. It will accommodate the addition, and the combination of the lots does bring into compliance the existing building structure.
All right, any questions or comments from alders?
I just have a comment. Rodney, why on the combined lot, it just shows that there's a lot of gravel, as opposed to on the original one? I mean, that, to me, just kind of stood out.
Yeah, I think what it does is it shows, I don't think it's, the one map doesn't show all the gravel surfaces. It shows a variety. There has been some expansion of the gravel area that we had to work with them to bring back into compliance. But I think it does depict what the existing conditions are out there.
Yeah.
We'll be dealing with that as part of the addition plan review.
To get rid of some of the gravel?
I'm sorry, what?
To get rid of some of the gravel, or?
Well, there are certain areas that will have to be paved as part of the addition, and certain areas where outdoor storage can be on the gravel.
Is this, maybe I missed this, Rodney, is this a home or is this a business?
It's an industrial site in Industrial Park South.
Okay.
It's on East Street.
All right, thank you.
Welcome.
Any other questions or comments? Oh, Alderperson Tukowski. Your hand is up. Is that from before? I can't hear you.
Sorry.
Did you have a question, or is that from before?
No, that was from before, sorry.
Yeah, I didn't
Glad
have
have it.
When I scrolled my screen, I just saw it there, so I didn't want to miss you. All right, no further questions or comments. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 And anybody opposed? That motion carries. All right, next several items are coming from the Finance Committee.
Several?
Bear with us.
Is that why this shirt is?
Well, it's just, hearkening toward Christmas, it's getting cooler weather, sun setting earlier.
I don't know if everybody on Zoom world can see it.
We'll have to wait till the camera's on me again and then.
Oh, let me.
It's on you right now.
Is it?
Yeah, we
perfect? Okay, there, all right, there.
All right, the floor is
Okay.
yours.
I didn't
All
know
right.
if each layer was a resolution.
R-170 of 2022 is to amend the 2022 adopted budget for Art Council's fund. So moved.
Second.
Second by Alderperson Reeves, thank you. Alderperson Schumacher.
This is we've done some of these consolidating of funds where we eliminate the numbered fund that it was in and transfer them back into the general fund. This is one of those cases.
All right. Anything you want to add, Dave?
That summarizes it pretty well. I can answer any questions if people have them.
All right. Are there any questions? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 And any opposed? None opposed. All right, next one.
All right, R-171 2022 amends the 2022 adopted budget for Fire Pension Fund and Fire Equipment Fund. So moved.
Second.
Second by Alderperson Jensen, Alderperson Schumacher.
This one's got a little bit of both of those in there. Changing the fund number, bringing them back into the general fund, but it also has the one additional bit, right, Dave? Is that?
Yeah, it's basically two things.
Yep.
The fire equipment fund hasn't been used for a couple years. I've already talked to the fire chief, and he's fine with just eliminating the fund, transferring it to general fund. The other is the fire pension fund. We've been doing kind of a convoluted back and forth in how we handle the accounting, and I'm basically recommending that the fire pension fund gets all the state revenue to offset fire pension expenses, and then the general fund gets the remainder.
All right, any questions or comments on this one? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
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 And any opposed? None opposed, that carries. All right, next one.
Continuing on, R-172, 2022 is an amendment, or to amend the 2022 adopted budget for the Safety Building Fund. So moved.
Second.
Second by President Hirsch. Alderperson Schumacher.
Another where we'll eliminate one numbered fund and pull it back into the general.
With one small caveat, the other, the safety building fund had a negative fund balance, so we've got to fund the 261280, transferring that from the unassigned general fund balance.
All right, any questions on this one? Alderperson Hunt?
I'm sorry, I didn't quite understand. The negative fund balance that we're going to pay, where does that money come from?
The negative fund balance in Fund 212 of $2,612.80, we've got to transfer from general fund unassigned fund balance to that negative fund.
What's the 41,960 referenced right below the first whereas?
How do I state this? The safety building fund did have budgeted expenditures and a transfer from the general fund, so I've got to have that expenditure in the general fund and then remove the transfers. So it's basically clean up with the exception of the 2613 that we've got to take out of fund balance.
Okay.
Yeah, wonder if that had something to do with the remodel that we did years ago or something.
No, that was current year activity last year.
Last year. Okay.
So if I understand this right, you're transferring back 41,000, but then transferring back, then paying it off the 2,600.
Well, it's convoluted because the budget says we're going to transfer 41,000 to the safety building fund so that they can spend 41,000. But then in the audited financial statements, we don't have the two funds, so we've got to eliminate the fund transfers so that they don't exist. And I'm like, we're making this way too complicated. Okay. We're transferring, in our ledger, we're transferring monies. The auditors say, okay, we're going to eliminate those transfers so that they're not on the financial statements because we can't have that special fund under GASB 54. And I agree with them. Why are we doing all these transfers for no purpose?
Okay, so is it similar to the other funds where you have it and it's coming right out of the general fund, but it's designated to the building safety? Is that what's going on? I'm just trying to follow.
No, that was part of the tax levy where part of the property tax levy was then said, we're going to levy in the general fund, transfer it to the safety building fund, spend the money in the safety building fund to have the auditors eliminate all the activity in the safety building fund and put it into the general fund.
And so you leave it in the general fund and just pay it directly?
Correct.
But then how do you know how much is in that building safety fund?
We're getting rid of it. It's now a department within the police department.
Okay. All right.
There was one discussion we had in finance earlier, and that's, we're essentially trading a 3-digit fund number for a 5-digit fund number.
Okay, so that's the thing that I'm just saying, you're just creating different fund numbers that are according to.
Well, not a fund number, it's a department number in the general fund.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's just different wording, that's ultimately it.
All right, my head is spinning, thanks, Dave.
My job is done.
All right.
Dazzle with numbers, that's what we do.
Well, if you want, I will get into GASB 87 and we can talk about present,
Not on the
future
agenda.
values.
We're not going there.
Yeah.
All right, any other questions on that one? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
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 All right, any opposed? Anybody confused? All right, that motion carries. All right, next item.
All right, R-173, 2022, amends the 2022 adopted budget for Technology Fund and Information Technology Media Services Department. So move.
Second.
Second by Alderperson Jensen. Go ahead, Brett.
Yep, another one where we're going to get rid of the 3-digit fund, and it would, although this one is just gonna be an elimination, right? We're not, well, I mean, I guess we can spend
Partially.
things, right, out of the general fund for it, but this one is also going to incorporate some of their ARPA ask, is that right?
Correct. Basically, because I was moving monies from the technology fund to the IT department, I thought, and I threw this past John Montgomery, and he was fine with it. We're basically withdrawing the ARPA request from IT for their services, using the technology fund to pay for those things, with the exception of $6,352, which I'm proposing to take out of the unassigned fund balance in general fund.
All right, any questions on that?
So because there was a fund balance with the technology fund, but it doesn't cover all the costs that was required or asked for in the ARPA fund, you're requesting that the 6,000 comes out of the general fund
Correct.
as opposed to ARPA funding.
Correct. And so then that will be, assuming council passes it, that ARPA request will be withdrawn.
Right, but you just decreased our general fund by,
$6,352, correct.
Yeah, it's not general fund.
okay.
All right, any other questions or clarifications needed? Alderperson Hutt?
Then the 38,000 for the Bullware and Telview products, those will be budgeted next year by the IT department?
No, those will be moved to the 22 budget for IT, and probably at 8:01 a.m. tomorrow, Derek will buy them.
Glad he's ready.
He might be on the phone as we speak.
So, I guess, okay. So what has happened here is that kind of,
We're trying to withdraw the ARPA
Right.
request, but we couldn't withdraw the whole thing, so we're
Right.
paying the difference out of the general fund balance.
okay, I'm just, it's interesting, but so the IT department gets their upper fundings in this convoluted way. I'm just making sure that the other departments are not gonna be thinking that just because they don't have this excess balance that now their ARPA funding, doesn't even get voted on through the committee of the whole. But yeah, we're
okay,
going through it.
I understand. You're kind of mixing things up. With, assuming this passes, There is no ARPA request for
No,
IT.
well, it's not an ARPA request, but you're still taking the $6,300 out of the general fund balance,
That
which
is
could
correct.
be used for salaries, which could be used for a number of other things. And it bypasses the committee of the whole making a decision of whether or not they wanted to fund this at all.
That is correct. I suggested it because it was in a technology fund for IT, and it was an IT request. If you do not want to approve it as council, you do not have to.
I guess I'd be comfortable with it becomes a zero balance and not the extra 6352 when we're trying to right-size salaries and all this other stuff that unilaterally IT gets a decision not based on what council wanted. And
The thing is the 6352 wouldn't be a sustainable funding source for salaries or benefits.
well,
Because once it's gone, and there wouldn't be a way to carry that amount forward.
yeah, but this is coming out of the general fund. It's not coming out of the IT fund.
It's coming out of the general fund balance,
Right.
which is money that rolled over from previous years. So it's not coming out of the actual, this year's budget.
No, that was the IT funding that didn't come out of this year's budget.
There was nothing, we have not budgeted for anything in the IT fund in '22 at all. So we said, we're just gonna leave that 31,000 sitting there. If council wants, we will leave it sitting there and they can have their ARPA request continue on.
It's a carryover
Ian has a
of previous years.
Was there a question from Alderperson
Yes.
Magaki? Go ahead.
Thank you. I love, Dave, that money was found in an IT byline. If it was done in looking at this ARPA request or however they thought, they clearly didn't know they had that money. Is it possible to use their monies and look at that 6,300 or so, what that amount is, as ARPA money as well, and not taken from the general fund, since that's what initiated all of this?
If I'm understanding your question correctly, you are asking that the ARPA request for IT be reduced from the 43,000 or whatever the figure is to $6,352.
Yes.
That is possible. The council can do whatever they want to.
And I wouldn't recommend that. We're talking about trying to protect the security in our system. And if something were to get hacked and we'd be kicking ourselves because we didn't spend the $6,000, it'll cost us way more than that in time and effort to restore things. So I would say, for that amount of money, I think we should move forward. I have Alderperson Hunt and Alderperson Reeves.
It strikes me as unfortunate that the IT fund didn't have quite enough money to pay for the full value on the two products that the IT people would like. In a way, I see it as reducing the demands on ARPA while slightly increasing demands on our general fund. But it allows IT to act immediately to get everything that would be needed. So, I mean, to me, it seems like a good use of the 6,000, and then allows us greater latitudes with the ARPA money as a result. So I would be in favor of doing this.
Okay, Alderperson Reeves?
And as a follow-up, I mean, we did a similar sort of thing with the Sustainability Committee because we felt like it was important that we get moving on that quickly. So we made an exception and took that money and did not take it out of ARPA funds and opted to use other means. So as far as an immediate need, I think knowing what's going on with some of the, IT issues throughout the country, I think, the 6,300 is probably a small price to pay in the scheme of things, knowing that it can cost us a lot more in the long run if we're not prepared for that sort of thing. So I would be in favor of this plan.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Alderperson Schumacher.
I'm going to agree with Lisa as well on that one. I mean, if we weren't just going to general fund for this, then, or if we still had the existence of the contingency fund, then I would have thought we would have just drawn 6,000 out of a contingency fund in order to fund this sort of purchase.
But this purchase is also, it's for ransomware, but then also just broadcasting services, so it's not, it's, the ransomware, most definitely. No, I mean, I'm just trying, when we get to the budget part and we have a lot of our staff that need to be right-sized, I just want you all to remember all these decisions that we're making. Because, if we pass the utilities, right-sizing, the city staff is gonna be pretty, feeling disgruntled. And I just wanna, make sure that we're doing everything we can possibly do to make sure that we right-size that as well.
Alderperson Carabello.
I appreciate all the perspectives of everybody. Also, one thing to remember, I think, is that we haven't yet determined the outlay of the ARPA fund, so there's no guarantee that this would have been
Right.
funded through the ARPA fund. So I think expediting this way makes a lot of sense in my mind.
Anybody else?
I agree, let's vote.
Okay. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 And any opposed? Any abstentions? That motion carries. All right, we'll move on to the next one. And that
Right.
one is R-174.
Yep, R-174 of 2022 amends the 2022 adopted budget for tourism fund. So moved.
Second.
Was that Alderperson Jensen, or who got the second? Sounded like a tie. Take your pick, Candy. Alderperson Schumacher, go ahead.
All right, this is another removing the 3-digit fund into a 5-digit department.
No, that I disagree with.
Uh-oh.
We still need to keep the tourism fund. This is 25,927 that I'm suggesting come out of the tourism fund back into the general fund, increasing the unassigned fund balance.
That's where the parentheses threw me.
Okay, so we have money coming in and money going out of the funds, huh?
Correct.
Okay. And the tourism fund, is that the hotel tax fund?
Correct.
Okay. So, and my understanding is most of that goes to the visitor services and then a portion is left for us.
Visitor services gets 70%, Chamber of Commerce gets 20%, and the 10% is retained in the general fund. The majority of it, 23,565,000, has been there since '06. We can't access that computer system anymore. I have no idea what it's for.
Okay. Any questions on that one? Yeah, I would just say, I want to, take the time to thank you for trying to clean some of this stuff up. I know whenever you get a new finance director, a new set of eyes on things, you see some things and you move things around so you can feel comfortable moving forward. but that does take a lot of time and effort to do that, so I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 And any opposed? None opposed, that motion carries. Got any more left in you?
Couple more.
Okay.
R-175, 2022 amends the 2022 adopted budget for vested compensated absences. So move.
Second.
Second by Jensen, go ahead.
This one I'll have Dave go over. This one's a little trickier.
This one is we're getting more complicated as we go. Okay, multiple things. The Stoughton Utilities calculates their PILT, payment in lieu of taxes, at year end, and typically pays it to the city in February. For whatever reason, we have been assigning fund balance for that, even though it's basically moving it from one department to another. There really isn't a need to have that assigned fund balance, but we've been keeping it there in all the time. So I'm recommending that we no longer have that assigned fund balance. That's step number one. Step number two, we've got vested benefits for the city employees for accrued sick wages. And that is a vested benefit under multiple Wisconsin case law. And under current accounting rules for governmental funds, we don't recognize that expense until it's either paid out or we've got a known retirement. So, for instance, we had 3 people who have retired in the police department this year, one in January. So at a minimum, that January one should have been expensed to last year and wasn't. That liability is about 1.2 million in round figures. I'm recommending that the assignment that we did for the PILT from Stoughton Utilities now be assigned to pay that liability. That covers about 68% of the liability. It's not 100%, but it gets us much closer. That allows us so that we don't have to keep a position open for when somebody leaves. For instance, if we had known all 3 retirements were in the police department, we would have had to raise their levy by $165,000. We can't do it under the levy limits. So like I said, I'm proposing that we at least partially fund that liability out there. And then to make it more complicated, what I am suggesting is that we actually set what I call a sick bank program in the general revenues, similar to what was done at Brown County when I started there, and then Dodge County when I found money up in Dodge County. That we would put $85,000 into the fund as it currently exists for pending retirements, because odds are somebody is going to be leaving the city, whether by retirement or taking another position. What this does is then puts that pool of $85,000 to make the department whole. So for instance, if, and I'm going to make something up, Sally in planning decides to leave and her payout is $40,000, when we pay out the $40,000, Rodney doesn't have to scramble to try and find the money for it. The proposal does give me the authority to move money out of that sick leave bank, as you call it, to the appropriate department to make them whole. And then Finance Committee earlier today saw the example of the reports that they'd be seeing, so there's always tracking in it. So I've got 3 kind of somewhat interrelated things all in the resolution making it complicated, but it all is kind of interrelated to where we're getting funding for everything. We got a separate resolution on this topic too, but I'm not going to kind of cloud the issue of this first one. So I'm assuming there's going to be questions, so have at it.
Go ahead with President Hirsch.
Okay. So my question is, going forward, will all the pilot payments go to this fund? Because is that what it's saying, or only this 85,000?
Okay.
Because we get
Okay.
payments yearly.
Okay.
So I just want to make sure that we're not, all that money isn't always going to this fund.
Okay. All I am doing is saying we put roughly 850,000 aside each year in assigned fund balance. We've already got the revenue, the general fund gets the revenue, the general fund's going to continue to get the revenue. I'm not touching that at all. All I'm doing is saying we put 850,000 aside that we really don't need to. We could have been using it for anything else. And I know AJ was excited when I found a partial funding for it so that this liability isn't out there. The department heads don't have to worry what's going to happen when Sally retires. I've got to keep a position open for half a year. How am I going to function? So this doesn't affect anything with the PILT activity.
Okay, so it's a one-shot 85,000 that you found in that account. And are you going to continue every year, put 85,000 into that account? That's what I'm trying to figure out.
Yep.
Is it continuing going forward, or is it a one-shot deal?
No, that's, the intent is that we're going to do it in the 23 budget and going forward. But I will also be working with AJ, because if she says, okay, the fire department is losing, and they don't have this many active employees, but 7 employees are going to be retiring, they need 280,000. We'll have to figure that out. But I picked 85,000 based upon the past few years. I didn't even knowing about the police department at the time I picked it. That's another resolution. But yes, the intent is always putting that 85,000 in the budget, taking it out of that 850,000 that we're assigning for it. Eventually, that will be gone, and we'll have to figure out how to fund the other retirements, but that's probably 7 to 10 years from now.
Anybody else have any questions? Alderperson Hunt.
I think I understand what you're doing here. I just have one question. The liability of 1.2 million, this 850 covers 68%?
Correct.
Is your later activity, you said you had another one, is that something that addresses the other 400,000?
No, not right now.
Not right now.
I don't have that. And under the levy limits, I don't know how to do it right now, but I'm at least solving a problem that we're going to have probably 5 to 7 years.
Okay.
And we'll have to figure out another way to do it in the future.
Okay.
Okay. So I guess what I'm trying to understand, if there's a relationship between the, we usually call it pilot or PILT or whatever it is.
Mhm.
It seems like we use that in the general fund. And I guess the concern is are we losing money in the general fund that would go?
Nope. The general fund's not losing anything. The revenue, we do an accrual entry December 31st saying utilities is going to pay us $850,000. And then they pay us $850,000. In February, they write a check for $850,000. We put it in the bank, clear out the accounts receivable. That process is going to continue every year. We're going to do an accrual entry in December, recognizing the revenue, and receive the cash the next year.
So there's no relationship between that and the general fund And there's no is there a relationship between that and the expense restraint? Because it's not revenue in the general fund.
This isn't going to affect the expense restraint program at all. The only caveat is, yes, if I put 85,000 in, I'm adding that into the budget. But the current year 22, and I'm going from memory, I might have it in this resolution. No, I don't, but when you, AJ, and I were working on things, the current year budget had 65,000. Again, that we were going to transfer, levy for 65,000, transfer it to another fund to hold it there. So, in effect, I would be increasing budgeted expenditures by 20,000 over. And when we were talking the high-level numbers in the past 2 weeks, I did take that into account.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, having unfunded liabilities is a stress for your department. I think utilities is in better shape. I think theirs are covered.
Well,
Those are
utilities
funded.
is another creature. Utilities, stormwater, and EMS use full accrual accounting, which means they've recognized that expense. When that, using that same example, when Sally leaves and 40,000 has to get paid out, it just affects accounts payable and cash. Doesn't affect the income statement at all. So yes, utilities has fully funded their liability.
Yeah, so I wish we were in a position where we're doing that, but I guess this heads us in the right direction.
It's a partial solution.
Okay. All right, well, there again, I know it takes a lot of effort to dig into this stuff, especially when you don't know all the history and what the rationale was about the way we were handling these in the past, so thanks for that. Anybody else have any questions on this one? Okay, hearing none, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 And any opposed? That motion carries. Looks like, will we have another one?
Two more.
Two more? Oh, my goodness. All right, go ahead.
Dave's been busy.
Yes, Dave wrote lots of resolutions.
I hope this is it. Or are there more coming at the next meeting?
Yeah, there's going to be more coming.
It's okay, as long as he finds money and not,
It comes and goes.
I know.
Go ahead, Brett.
R-176 of 2022 amends the 2022 adopted budget for the sick leave fund. So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Jensen.
Brett, do you want me to take this?
Yeah, this will be like the second half of
Yeah,
what
this
you
is
alluded to.
related to what we had before. Because we had a separate sick leave fund that had a fund balance, it paid for the 165,000 roughly that was paid out for the police department, but still had an existing fund balance. If I get rid of that fund and then move everything back to the general fund to be consistent with how the auditors do the financial statements, I'm in effect, at the end of the day, adding $31,754 to the general fund, which I'm then recommending adding that to the sick leave assigned fund balance to help, and maybe we're at 69% or now or whatever. So this is kind of step two of what we were discussing before, but at the end of the day, I'm moving everything back to the general fund and giving the general fund more money.
Okay. Any questions on this one?
So you move it back to the general fund, give it more money, but then you're assigning it to the sick leave.
Correct, that's my recommendation. Because that's what that fund was for, the sick leave. So I said, if the council just approved creating a assigned fund balance for sick leave, and this resolution is recommending that the assigned fund balance for sick leave be increased by $31,754 because of this fund closure for sick leave fund.
All right, my question on this one, and for both AJ and Davis, I mean, is there a scientific way to even project this? I mean,
Yeah, because there's maxes. So we could look at anticipated retirements. I mean, most department heads do have some type of idea of when employees would be retiring, and then we have the max amount of sick leave that would be paid out to the employee. We could probably ballpark it. It wouldn't be a scientific number, because you don't know if somebody's going to utilize that time or if they'll be at the max. You never know if there's going to be a life event in there. But I think we could do a maximum and then a mid guess for you that would be somewhere in between there.
yeah, I think that might be helpful just to kind of see where we're at, and if we're landing at that 68 or 70% or whatever it is. So, you know, going forward, as we continue to tweak this thing, we have something to work with. But, I mean, I think this gets us a good start. And it really also can help raise awareness of where we're at as potential retirements, because we talk about it, but we never really put it down on paper until it's almost ready to happen.
Right.
So,
Okay.
appreciate that. Anybody else have any questions or comments or thoughts on this one? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 And any opposed? None opposed, that motion carries. And is this the last one?
Last one, are you ready?
Oh my goodness, we gotta make it.
R-177, 2022 is an amendment, or amends the 2022 adopted budget for WRS unfunded pension liability. So move.
Second.
Second by Jensen, go ahead.
This one is also complicated.
Okay. When the Wisconsin retirement system was set up, created back in '82, multiple funds were combined together, and everybody who was a member of the new Wisconsin retirement system shared in the unfunded pension liability. Wisconsin retirement system was charging 8% interest, and lots of entities started paying that off. City of Stoughton's no different. So back in 2012, we borrowed $555,000 in round figures from Stoughton Utility, paying them 3% instead of paying WRS 8%. Good move. Right now, that liability is down to a principal balance of about $107,000. We levy approximately $57,000 each year for that. My suggestion is that we take the fiscal impact of 108,658, take it out of unassigned general fund balance, use it to pay Stoughton Utilities, get rid of that liability so that both departments don't have to track it, and then the approximately $57,000 that we were levying for that, we're using for something else, whether it's Beanie Babies, employee raises, whatever the case may be. But I'm trying to free up money to other purposes.
I appreciate that.
Thank you.
The 108,000 or 107,000 balance, each year the 57,000 is being applied to.
The 57 would be principal and interest.
Yeah. So basically in 2 years?
It would be about 3 years and 3 months roughly that it would be paid in full.
Okay. Oh, makes
So we're advancing it, but to be honest, all we're doing is taking it out of our bank account at U.S. Bank and giving it to our bank account at Wells Fargo that Stoughton Utilities has.
Whatever works.
All right. Anybody have any comments on this one?
I'm for this as long as there is no outlay for the purchase of Beanie Babies.
Okay.
Even a Beanie Baby riding a bike?
No Beanie Baby.
They don't exist anymore, do they?
So what are the auditors gonna say about all this?
The auditors are very happy, and I've been keeping them updated on this. They're quite excited that there's going to be less work for them.
Yeah, does that mean we're gonna have less costs for them?
That is my intent.
All right, we'll look for that number too.
We're still going to have it for calendar year 22 because they've got those funds there, but the elimination entries that they've been doing are going to be gone. And they've actually had a fund in the financial statements, an internal service fund that we've never recognized. I'm starting to recognize it and getting rid of it, so they're very happy.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like it'll make things more efficient for your department as well.
Correct. Shannon and I don't have to coordinate and make sure that the balances tie out between the two, and we don't have to budget for it and everything else. Stoughton Utilities can use that $108,000 for whatever they need to.
Okay. All right, any other questions or comments on this one? And how many more should we expect at the next meeting?
Off the top of my head, I know of two. I've drafted one. We've got one that we did at August 9th and approved that never got onto this agenda. We'll have to do that one. And I anticipate I will be combining some funds for the senior center.
Okay. Awesome. All right, all in favor of this motion, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed, that motion carries. Thank you so much. Next item is, what is this one? R178. This is the utilities alignment, and our utilities liaison is?
It comes from personnel. It's actually Lisa.
Oh, it is coming from personnel. It went through utilities and personnel. So, Alderperson Reeves, you get to introduce this one. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Resolution R178, 2022, authorizing and directing the proper city officials to approve the utilities realignment, and I would move for approval.
Second.
Second by Alderperson Jensen. Alderperson Reeves?
Well, Directors Gillingham and Weiss gave, I thought, a very thorough presentation, so they could probably be best able to answer any questions. But the one thing I was just going to mention is we did chat a bit in personnel about some of the technical expertise that's required now of utilities employees. I think it's evolved a lot over the years, and Director Weiss shared some of that. So I think that, I don't want to speak for her, but I believe that has put some extra pressure on recruitment, because you limit your pool, I think, when you're requiring some of the technical credentialing that we now need in utilities. So I don't know if that summarizes it correctly, Director Weiss, but I think that was one of the things we talked about.
Absolutely, thank you for that, and that's a good explanation. One of the big things that we see is particularly our wastewater operators. That certification used to be a much shorter time period. Those tests now have become more intensive, and the time period is now 7 years. So actually you have to work in the plant for 7 years to be an advanced certified operator, and you have to take all the tests that come with that. I think the one thing too that we're feeling very much is that we've got 9 municipal utilities within 30 miles. We've got 3 investor owns within that same 30 miles, and we've got a co-op. So our staff has a lot of knowledge and has a lot of certifications that they need to ultimately do their job, but we also have a lot of opportunities for them to possibly go other places, and so wages and just how the utility overall is actually organized is really very critical for us to move forward. Right now, as of Sunday, we actually have 7 vacancies. We are looking to only fill 6 of those. We have been, as we've had these vacancies occur, our staff has been picking up those pieces, and I've been continuing to ask them for their patience as we look to move this forward in a way that we actually have a position created where we're not say, putting someone else out of a position, so that we're moving this forward in a very systematic way, and fill the needs of our customers going forward, as opposed to just filling the vacancies as the positions are currently written, would be a disservice to our customers, because they just have become antiquated, and we're able to do these, some of the same duties more efficiently overall.
All right, thank you. Alderperson Schumacher.
One other bit that we highlighted in the personnel meeting was, as some of the titles have changed in there, that was looked at, and these are all current industry standard titles. So it also modernizes just even the titling within the utilities department also.
I think the important part to look at here is reflecting back on the amount of time and the research that's been done. I mean, I've been carrying this backpack around just in case somebody wanted to see any of the studies that we went through. And, you know, pulling all that data together, taking the time to make sure, and I'm sure when you look at, you know, this was budgeted in 2021, but we took our time and did this right. So we're not going to be coming back asking for a change in a couple of years. This is going to take the utility into the future. And looking at those credentials and making sure that those are being recognized within the position descriptions, taking into consideration as the organizational chart was designed, that those positions that are sitting open, number one, should be not being recruited for, but yet setting a plan in place for succession planning that will move our utility forward in the future and help us to be able to retain staff, not just through compensation, but through opportunity. And by putting this entire program in place, we're going to be able to move forward for the first time in I can't tell you how many years. Not just filling a position because it's open, but taking the time to make sure that we're positioned appropriately moving forward with the right people in the right place. And I can tell you, coming from the recruiting side, being able to sit down with a potential candidate and show them that this is the job description, these are the expectations, that they have that clear path to what it takes to be successful. And knowing that we talk about the upside, that there's opportunity for growth and recognition for staff that have gone above and beyond. So again, we ask for your vote.
Thank you. And, you know, I wanted to kind of reiterate what President Hirsch said. We're extremely concerned about the rest of the city employees that were not in the position to put a program like this together and put it in place because of the spending caps that have been imposed on us by the state of Wisconsin. I was at a conference last week, and, you know, many municipalities are in the same situation as we are. Some of them have been able to incorporate some things, you know, like steps into their programming in the past. Some of them were locked in with more employees than Stoughton was when the caps went into place, because Stoughton was you know, notoriously frugal at the time, and we're being penalized to that 10 years later. So we're extremely concerned about that. We're going to continue to look for strategies to try to address this, not only locally but at the state level. One of the suggestions I made was to use the model that we're using for Stoughton Utilities with rate increases in order to be able to have a non-partial board make the determinations instead of representatives of the state of Wisconsin that really have no interest in what we're trying to do here in Stoughton. And then also trying to address some of the unfunded mandates that impose upon us. A recent example of that is in order for a public works employee to drive a vehicle, they have to have a CDL. It's $3,400 to get a CDL nowadays, and that's a federal mandate. And so what we're going to do is I'm working with Director Aber to try to get more information on that, to find out why public and private employees were all lumped in together, and maybe try to seek exemptions if we can demonstrate that our risk is lower than private employers. So we're always looking for ways to, you know, to try to address it. But in the meantime, you know, we certainly are concerned about our city staff and, you know, what the future holds, because, yeah, we can address utilities tonight, but we also know that we have another large group of employees that are really concerned about, you know, their compensation and their plans going forward. So we are sensitive to that. AJ, go ahead.
I want to just go a little bit further on that. President Hirsch has sat in on a meeting with us addressing and talking about the situation that we're going to be in with the city staff. You have 100+ employees there, and the issues that I brought up here on the utility side are the same that you're going to face as we move forward in the budget process on the city side. So I'm going to ask that we all sharpen our pencils, look for ways that we can, you know, find different funding mechanisms. And I can't thank Dave enough for looking and seeing what opportunities are out there for us. But I have met with every director, as I told you before when I started out the utilities presentation, and looked at that compensation. And we can't go back and change time. But having an unfunded compensation plan in place, we invested all that money in the Springstead study. And my apologies. That study was put in front of those employees, showing them where they should be compensated. And the fact that the city's never been able to bring them to that point causes employee morale issues. And they know that looking at positions out there on Indeed or other city positions, other villages are paying more. We've become that training ground for our other staff as well. So that shouldn't at all impact your decision tonight. We have the funding for utilities. We need to make that happen. But we need to be equally as diligent for our city staff, that 100+ employees, to make sure that we can retain them and reward them for the jobs that they're doing fairly. That's it.
All right. Anybody else have any thoughts or questions on this one? President Hirsch, go ahead.
I mean, I just want to reiterate, and I said this in utilities, I strongly support this. I really think that utilities has done a stand-up job, not that, I mean, as well as our city employees, and like AJ said, that's a different can of worms, a different funding source, and I hope that we can get there with the staff as well. You know, like I said, we have to be creative and really look at things, but I really think that we need to support utilities and get this really kind of innovative plan moving forward. I mean, I think it sets it up, and I really want to say I really appreciate all the work that went into this whole realignment and restructuring. Change is hard, and I know there's, you know, some people probably balked at it, and I really want to give kudos to AJ and Director Weiss and probably Brian Hoops back there that have really worked hard on getting these position descriptions done and figuring out how best to move forward with utilities, so thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 And any opposed? That motion carries. All right, thank you. Well, the next one I'm hoping won't be as complicated. Candy, do you want to walk us through the next one on the council meetings?
Sure. Let's see here. We're looking at the November election falling on, or actually, excuse me, the November council meeting falling on the November election, November 8th. So we're wondering if we should consider now changing that meeting on the 8th and what direction you would like to go. If we should move it to November 15th and maintain the other meeting on the 22nd, or what your desires would be in regards to that.
And I guess I would add that the week of the 22nd is Thanksgiving week as well.
Yeah.
So Alderperson Jensen has his hand up.
Yeah, my question would be to Candy, if we went with the 15th, is that going to give you and your staff enough time to deal with the election prior to our meeting?
15th is afterwards. It's November 8th is the election.
Pardon?
November
Right.
8th is the election.
Yeah, the election, right. You have the election on the 8th. Is that if we have our meeting on the 15th?
Which is a week later.
Week later, right, but her staff has things that they need to do after the election. So I want to make sure that she has enough time to do that, plus prepare for the meeting on the 15th if we do the 15th.
Yes, we could get it done.
Yeah,
We could get it done.
Hopefully we don't have a recount, knock on wood.
Yeah.
And there is a Park and Recs meeting that night too.
Right.
So,
yeah, there's a host of things that would have to be adjusted.
well, it's
so-
actually choice.
And we don't have to make the decision tonight. What we're trying to do is at least get it on everyone's radar. And if you want, we can bring it back at the next meeting. We have plenty of time.
And the other thing too is that if the agenda is light, we can always just cancel that meeting and move it out.
Right. I mean, it's gonna be right around budget time as well. I mean, that's the other issue, is, we typically approve our budget in November. So there's a lot of things to consider here, but we want to at least, let you know that we're thinking about it and maybe bring it back at the next meeting or so to take action.
Mayor, I have a comment,
Sure.
which is, could you maybe give us some of those factors that would affect the dates in a bulleted list and send us a doodle poll?
We can do that. You want to do that, Candy?
Sure.
Be a
All right.
time saver, possibly?
Well, and also, is it possible to list all the dates again of the CIP meetings and the budget meetings? Or the budget's gonna be separate from council meetings? I mean, there's a lot of meetings coming up. I think people need to get it on their calendars as soon as possible. I know we used to have CIP meetings in, August and sometimes even earlier. And so we're getting a late start this year, so that means everything's gonna be kind of bunched up. And so as much as that we can get on the calendar and everybody know, that the better.
All right, we'll work on that this week. Anybody else have any thoughts?
I guess I would have a thought. If we're having a mid-month meeting on the 15th, maybe the 22nd could either move to the 29th, or maybe that's a meeting if the agenda's fairly light, we could, just have the 15th meeting that month.
Okay.
Or just eliminate both of them. Just kidding.
We know where you'll be. All right. So we'll send out some information and then we'll bring that one back. But so that moves us to item number 20. We do have an offer to purchase lot 4 in the business park, and we do have an opportunity to go into closed session to take a look at that offer. Is there anything we need to cover, Matt or Rodney, before we go into closed session?
I don't believe so.
Not that I know of.
All right. Would somebody like to make a motion then, as it's stated on the agenda, to go into the closed session? Anybody want to volunteer to make the motion?
So move.
All right. Can you read it? I think they prefer if we read it.
They have to.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I can get back to the agenda here.
The Common Council may convene in closed session per state statute 19.85 (1) deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session.
All right, there's a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Caravello. We have to do a roll call vote on this one, Candy. So whenever you're ready.
Mayeski,
Sure.
Reeves,
Aye.
Hunt,
Here.
Schumacher,
Aye.
Venegas,
Aye.
Fikowski,
Aye.
Caravello,
Aye.
Raff,
Aye.
Hiley,
Aye.
Hirsch,
Aye.
Jensen,
Aye.
and Magaki.
Aye.
12 in favor.
All right, you guys want to take a break?
Ooh, yeah. Let's stand up.
All right, let's take 5. We'll get back together at 9:45 and see how it goes.
I feel like rigor mortis is setting.
Not even.